During Donald Trump's presidential election campaign, he promised that if he got elected to high office, then his administration would move the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. This campaign promise was also pledged by other leading members of his campaign team, including his running mate Mike Pence, in the hope that he would secure the Jewish and pro-Israel evangelical vote. By proposing to move the US embassy to Jerusalem, Trump was also sending a powerful message to Israel and the world that his administration would stand strong with the Jewish nation. He understood that the vast majority of Americans would support him because they identify themselves with the pioneering nation who fought for her independence against all odds. Millions of American Christians see Israel through a spiritual lens as being God's nation, re-established as a state in fulfillment of biblical prophecy, and believe that if America blesses Israel, she will be blessed by God in return. Since Trump's inauguration as America's 45th president, he has been deliberating on the move, seeking more advice and considering the potential implications that this would have for American interests in the Arab world and beyond.
Let me ask you about the embassy in Israel. As it relates to moving this embassy to Jerusalem. Evangelicals, it's important for evangelicals. Are you committed to doing that?
Well, I'm looking at it. We're studying it. As you know, we discussed this before. We're studying it very, very long and hard. You know, it's a very big decision because every president for the last number of presidents, large number, they've come in and they were going to do it, and then all of a sudden they decide they don't want to get involved. It's a big, big decision, but we're studying the issue right now. I've always liked the concept of doing it. I will tell you that. I'll have a decision in the not too distant future.
Are the chances good?
Well, there's certainly a chance of it, absolutely. But we're doing very detailed studies on that, and we'll come out very soon. I hate to do that because that's not usually me, studies.
Right.
It's usually I do what's right. But this has two sides to it. It's not easy. And I'll make a decision over the not too distant future.
To move the US embassy to Jerusalem is not just a political decision, but also has huge spiritual significance by aligning the world's only superpower with God's plans and purposes for Israel and the Jewish people. To move the US embassy will send a powerful message to the world that the United States of America recognizes Israeli sovereignty over its eternal city, Jerusalem. The embassy move would also go a long way to counter the rest of the international community's plans to come against Jerusalem through the recent biased UN Security Council Resolution 2334 and the UNESCO vote on the reclassification of the Temple Mount and Western Wall. Both these votes failed to recognize Israel's spiritual, historical, and cultural connection to the Temple Mount, Western Wall, and the Old City of Jerusalem. This not only represents a complete abandonment of Israel to enemies, but also the failure of the West to protect their own spiritual heritage, especially considering the growing global Islamist agenda. Ever since the re-establishment of the State of Israel in May 1948, the international community has only recognized Israeli sovereignty in West Jerusalem. In 2006, the last remaining foreign embassies, Costa Rica and El Salvador, relocated their embassies because of Arab pressure. Today, there are no foreign embassies in Israel's capital city. They're all in Tel Aviv. This was for political reasons because during the early years of the state, the international community opposed Israel's control over Jerusalem and insisted that the city be under the control of the United Nations, as stated in the 1947 UN Partition Plan. In the early years of the state, the Israeli government offices were based in Tel Aviv until 1951, when the governmental departments were moved to Jerusalem. The international communities did not follow suit, but remained in Tel Aviv. After the Six-Day War in June 1967, many foreign governments moved their embassies to Jerusalem, but this was to only last 6 years as many nations severed their diplomatic relations with Israel or moved their embassies to Tel Aviv in protest at the Yom Kippur War of October 1973. This war was one of the bloodiest in Israel's recent history. Israel was invaded by a surprise attack by Egypt and Syria on the holiest day of the Jewish calendar, Yom Kippur. In 1980, the Israeli Prime Minister Begin annexed Jerusalem to unite the city under Israeli sovereignty. In response, the UN Security Council passed Resolution 478, condemning Israel's declaration of a unified Jerusalem, and recommended that any foreign embassy still left in Jerusalem should be relocated. Now, when Israel was feeling isolated by the international community, Christian Zionists from all over the world came together and responded by establishing the first international Christian embassy in Jerusalem, called the ICEJ. The location and name were chosen deliberately to show that, unlike other international organizations, its members regard Jerusalem as the capital of the State of Israel. The ICEJ Christian Embassy was opened in 1980 by the Mayor of Jerusalem, Teddy Kollek, who was quoted as saying that he found it to be one of the most moving experiences of his life when Christian representatives from different nations presented their country's flags before him, pledging to pray for the peace of Jerusalem in the name of all Bible-believing Christians at home. Today, ICEJ is best known for hosting an annual Christian celebration of the Feast of Tabernacles, which attracts several thousand participants from all over the world. 22 years ago, Congress and the Senate passed the Jerusalem Embassy Act of 1995 that called for Jerusalem to remain a united city, and the act recognizes the city as the capital of the State of Israel. Even today, the United States has withheld recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital city. Since the law has been passed, it has never been implemented and has been opposed by the following presidents: Clinton, Bush, and Obama. And they have consistently used the presidential waiver on the grounds of national security. The Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, said recently about the proposed embassy move, "I would like to clarify unequivocally that our view has always been and continues to be that the United States Embassy should be here in Jerusalem. Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, and it is appropriate that not only the American Embassy be here, but all embassies will move here. And I believe that in due course, most will come here to Jerusalem." There are no legal barriers preventing President Trump from moving the US Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, but there is mounting international opposition to this proposed move. The Palestinian Authority has already announced that if Trump goes ahead with the embassy move, then they would no longer recognize Israel as a state, and threatened that there will be violence. One senior figure within the Palestinian Authority has been quoted as saying that the US embassy move would be as good as a declaration of war. The European Union and the British government oppose the US embassy move because they believe that this will damage the peace process and could derail their plans to create a Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital. There is also a real security concern that if President Trump goes ahead with the proposed embassy move to Jerusalem, then American embassies in the Arab world could come under attack. As a direct result, we could see riots on the Arab streets. But should the American government not fulfill Trump's campaign promise because of fear? I do not underestimate the international pressure that is currently being placed on Donald Trump not to move the US Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Even with his own intelligence agencies, they will warn him of their security concerns if the move goes ahead. The embassy move will require of Donald Trump real courage and leadership to go against the rest of the international community and recognize Israeli sovereignty over their eternal covenant city. He has already demonstrated that he has the strength in defying international public opinion with putting a ban on immigration into the states from Muslim nations that the US sees as a threat to its own national security. Now is the time, Mr. President, to act. It is your destiny to be a modern-day Cyrus and restore the fortunes of Jerusalem by recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital city. By doing this, you will stand up to the global Islamist agenda that seeks to control Jerusalem and deny any Jewish claims to their ancient covenant city. Not only will you be giving a wonderful gift of friendship to Israel, but you will ensure that America will be blessed by the God of Israel. You will be aligning the world's only remaining superpower with God's plans and purposes for Israel and the Jewish people. Mr. President, you will go down as a history maker by protecting the Western world, by recognizing that only Israeli sovereignty over Jerusalem will secure religious freedom in the holy and sacred city. Your act of courage will encourage other nations to move their embassies to Jerusalem. Can I remind you, Mr. President, of the scripture that was read by Rabbi Marvin Hare at your inauguration?
Eternal God, bless President Donald J. Trump and America, our great nation. Guide us to remember the words of the psalmist, who may dwell on your holy mountain, one who does what is right and speaks the truth, who knows that when you eat the labor of your hands, you are praiseworthy, that he who sows in tears shall reap in joy, because the freedoms we enjoy are not granted in perpetuity, but must be reclaimed by each generation. As our ancestors have planted for us, so we must plant for others. While it is not for us to complete the task, neither are we free to desist from them. Dispense justice for the needy and the orphan, for they have no one but their fellow citizens. And because a nation's wealth is measured by her values and not by her vaults, bless all of our allies around the world who share our beliefs. By the rivers of Babylon, we wept as we remembered Zion. If I forget thee, O Jerusalem, may my right hand forget its skill. The doer of all these shall never falter. May the days come soon when justice will dwell in the wilderness and righteousness will abide in the fertile fields, and the work of righteousness will be peace, quietness, and confidence forever. Amen.
Psalm 122 says, "The joy of going to the house of the Lord, a song of ascents of David. I was glad when they said to me, let us go up to the house of the Lord. Our feet have been standing within your gates, O Jerusalem. Jerusalem is built as a city that is compact together, where the tribes go up, the tribes of the Lord, to the testimony of Israel, to give thanks to the name of the Lord. For thrones are set there for judgment, the thrones of the house of David. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they prosper you who love you. Peace be within your walls, prosperity within your palaces. For the sake of my brethren and companions, I will now say, peace be within you. Because of the house of the Lord our God, I will seek your good." May you not forget Jerusalem, Mr. President, and may you fulfill your campaign pledge and move the US Embassy to Jerusalem, to this ancient covenant city that will be the seat of government for the coming King and Lord of Lords.